Come have fun with us and don't forget to subscribe.
What's up everybody, I'm Rick.
And I'm Anna.
And welcome to our review of the 1937 movie La Grande Illusion. For those of you who don't know, this is our bucket list channel, a channel in which we try to realize the goals and dreams that are on our bucket list. One of those goals is for us to watch every movie that was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Award from 1927 to 2028. As of now, Anna, we've watched 93 movies on that list, the latest of which is La Grande Illusion, the movie we're going to be talking about today. Released on June 8, 1937, La Grande Illusion is a réalisation d'art cinématographique, French war film. The movie tells the story of two French soldiers who were captured and imprisoned in a German POW camp during World War I. Several escape attempts follow until they are eventually sent to a seemingly inescapable fortress.
I love this movie.
You
were gonna ask me? Were you gonna ask me? I love this movie.
I was gonna ask you, what did you think of this movie?
I gotta tell you, this movie felt to me like how it feels when you read a good book. I don't know if this is based on a book or not, but I feel like if it was, it would be a great novel.
It is not. I gotta concur here. I gotta agree with you totally. This is, well, spoiler alert for the ranking. This is by far the best movie we've seen this year, but this is also one of the best movies we've seen in this list.
Yeah.
Period. And in terms of like characters, theme, you know, the way this movie approaches war in a very meaningful way, which reminded me of, All Quiet on the Western Front. The treatment of the message and of the story, it's so excellent. We'll get into
spot on, and dialogue and story development and everything is so good about this movie.
Yes,
we have great things to say. Stay tuned for more of that.
It's a great movie, a movie that, by the way, in its actual form, the best quality possible, might have not been seen by us today, because for many years the original negative of La Grande Illusion were thought to have been lost in an Allied air raid. That is, until it was revealed that the originals were shipped to Berlin, where they were being stored. When the Allied occupied Berlin in 1945, the Russians shipped the film to their archives in Moscow, where the negative stayed there until they were returned to France in 1960, but stayed in storage at the Toulouse Cinémathèque because it was unidentified. So nobody even knew that it was there, and people thought still that the negatives were lost.
Oh wow, and when did they discover they had it there?
So for 30 years, no one suspected it was there until it was rediscovered in the early 1990s. Storied history for this film.
It's crazy to think not only movies, but how many other works of art might have had a similar path in their life during the 20th century. It's insane.
Yeah. So here we're just talking about the negative, right? There was still a print version of the film that still existed, so it would not have been completely lost. Where to start? Where do we even begin?
It's so hard because so many things happen and there are so many elements. It's a very rich movie with good things, with only good elements. I think I want to start maybe by saying this is not really a war movie in the classical sense. We do see a little bit of war, but not too much. It's mostly
we do not see battle there in this movie.
It's only the story of these French officers who get captured and the way they interact with each other.
So yeah, before we get into all of that, maybe we should take a look at what was being attempted here by the director and the crew. So we're gonna do things a bit differently than we usually do. We'll go over the crew and the cast first, and then talk about the movie. This movie was directed by Jean Renoir, and it stars Jean Gabin as Lieutenant Maréchal, Marcel Dallot as Lieutenant Rosenthal, Pierre Frenzy as Captain Boeldieu, and Erich von Stroheim as Captain and then Major von Rauffenstein. I think I said that right. Something interesting about Erich is that in Jean Renoir's memoir, he writes that despite having been born in Vienna, Austria, the actor did not speak much German, and so had to learn the lines like during the breaks, like between filming.
That's dedication to be able to, play a role in a language that you don't know that much. That's hard.
Also stars Dita Parlo as Elsa, the widow German that we see at the end. So I went through all the Actors here, we can spend a little time to talk about them. Did anyone pop out to you as, to me, they're all great, but I have a favorite.
I have a favorite too.
Yeah.
Yes. Stroheim.
Mm.
I thought his character was so complex. All the characters here are complex, but his was the most complex in my opinion.
Yes, definitely. And he encompasses the whole idea of the movie, right? Of these people who across border understands each other. Like the way he acts with Boeldieu the whole time, talking to him about their shared background, right? I also went to Maxime. I also knew this one girl, I also speak several languages. They have these things in common, even though they come from, different cultural background. This, unites them more than the war divides them, which is a central theme of the movie, really. And the way he plays it the whole time, you can feel him being pushed and pulled by duty on one side and
his personal feelings.
Yeah, his humanity on the other, right? I don't want to have to shoot you, Boeldieu, but I'll do it because it is my duty, right?
Right. And then on the other hand, you have Boeldieu understanding that, of course, you had to do it. I would have done the same, even if we both despise the situation that we are being put in.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand also that this situation comes really towards the end of a war. Like they've already been at war for so long. And so it's also the exhaustion and the realization that what we're doing here, it's necessary for each one of us to serve our own countries, but really it doesn't serve us or humanity.
Though their characters, both Boeldieu and Stroheim, like I feel have a different view than the rest of the characters. Let's now get into what I was talking about earlier, some of the intentions behind the movie, which I think will guide our discussion in a more structured way here. It is not based on a book, but the title comes from a book, a 1909 book called The Grande Illusion, which argues about the futility of war because all European countries have economic interests to not have war, to work together. But here, Renoir is more so talking about common human interests more so than just the economic. And he uses the First World War as a lens through which he can examine the specter of the upcoming war, right? This movie was made in 1937. We already have the rise of Nazi Germany. And so the approach to the movie is kind of a critique of contemporary politics and warfare as a tool of politics, putting forward the idea that common or universal humanity transcend these national or racial boundaries that were put forward by the Nazi, but also a number of different countries at the period, right? Rise of nationalism in the 1930s. That no, we're all human, we're all way more similar than
we are different.
We are different than we think that we are, and war really is not an efficient tool of politics, and it is more a tool of division, but that division is artificial. We're not really divided, we're the same, right? Boeldieu and Stroheim are the same. Some of the different characters, it's not for any reason that one of the main characters is Jewish, right? But he's also the nice guy. He's sharing his meal with everyone, right? Even though they're judging him because his family is rich, and there are some comments made here and there about the fact that he's Jewish, but no, they portray the character as a good character, right? So Renoir uses the movie a lot as a way to warn people about the upcoming war.
What I get is that really this is not a movie about war. It's a movie about the people, you know, and sure, how war impacts their lives, but not even actual combat, because we don't see them doing that, about how they communicate. And it's interesting to think that he had the wisdom to foresee how all of these things would come into play, in real life in the future.
But even just because he's using the First World War, right? So you use past experience, because all wars really could be interpreted in a similar way. It's humans fighting humans, and what he's trying to say is that no, we're way more similar than we're different. There's a futility to war, right? It's La Grande Illusion, the title. Someone mentions in the movie, at least when this war is over, it'll be the last, right? The war to end all war. And someone in the movie, I think it was Boeldieu, says that's an illusion. It's interesting when the German widower, for example, shows the picture of her family who died, and they're like, here's a photo of them at this victory, at that victory, at this victory, they're dead. Right? It's the futility of it all. In order to approach this like overall theme, he then divides the whole movie in like separate smaller themes. One is of course class. We have the aristocrat Boeldieu and Rauffenstein, who are from the same class, and that's why they get along so well.
And they
right?
understand each other.
Because of their similar background, they also have similar life experience, even being from two different countries, right?
Yeah, but they knew people, they knew the same people,
they went to the same
places. Yes.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? That's again this idea that no, we're similar, even across borders, across language barriers too. But yeah, other than class, then we have this other idea of not only the Jewish character, but I don't know if you noticed, there's a black officer too.
I noticed.
And there with them, he's totally ignored. And that's on purpose, right? That's
okay.
There's even a scene where he finishes a painting and he's like, oh, look at my painting. And they don't even pay attention to him, right? They just scoff at him, like, you don't exist.
Right.
He's not included in the plans to escape or anything like that. We're portraying all of these different elements of humanity and how in certain places they're toxic, but in other places, most of the movies, people are helping each other.
Right.
Even enemies.
Well, helping and understanding each other.
Understanding each other is more so, right? But I thought when I say helping each other, I think right away of when Maréchal was in isolation and the German soldier come and tries to cheer him up, right?
Right, brings him like a music thing to keep himself busy so that he doesn't go insane. Yeah. When the German soldier leaves the cell, one of the other soldiers who was waiting by the door asks him, why was he screaming? To which he answers, because this war is too long. Really, it's not about this one thing that's happening here or that he's isolated or all of that. We are all going mad because this war is lasting too long.
And that's the story of the First World War, right? They start out thinking like, oh, this is going to be quick and done and I'm back to my wife and everybody's happy, right? And it just keeps on going and going and going. And you see the change in the movie and the mood of the people as things keeps happening.
Right.
What did you think of, so we talked mainly about Boeldieu and Rauffenstein, but Maréchal is one of the main characters, if not the main character of the movie. What did you think of him and his whole experience?
Really? I always thought of Boeldieu as the main character of the movie.
The two of them, right?
Yeah. What I found interesting about his character really, to me, was that in a way simpler, but at the same time more grounded, I feel. And it's interesting to me to see the relationship that he has with Boeldieu when you compare it to the relationship that Boeldieu has with Rauffenstein. Because while Boeldieu and Rauffenstein have a more like a similarity in ideals and the way they view, their position in the world and the war and everything else, but at the same time Boeldieu has more of a understanding of simpler people, like his friend here.
Yeah. Because you say similarity in ideals, there was one difference is that, Boeldieu, he doesn't mind like that their class, the aristocrats, like they're of the past, right?
Yeah.
They will not survive this war.
Yeah.
Rauffenstein feel very badly about this, but Boeldieu doesn't as much, right? He
very much accepts it as just a reality of life.
Yeah, the times, they're evolving.
And what I like is that in Maréchal's character, you do feel like he belongs there, wherever he is. He doesn't feel like he shouldn't be on the same level with Boeldieu. He does feel like that's his place in the world. He doesn't feel like
he's still an
behind.
officer.
Yeah, exactly.
And he acts accordingly, but also he understands the other people that he's imprisoned with who come from more modest backgrounds. While they don't necessarily understand Boeldieu, right? At the beginning of the movie, one of them asks, like, can we trust this guy? Which is ironic because he ends up sacrificing himself to help them escape.
I really like that scene. That whole small arc there where he sacrifices himself, especially at the end when Rauffenstein realizes why he sacrificed himself so that his friends could escape.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a very subtle and elegant slap in the face to prove his point that those people whom he helped escape,
they're worth it.
They're worth it, and they're just as valuable as him to his country, to his cause,
Which is interesting because they escape, but we're not aware of their ultimate fate, right? And they have this conversation, Maréchal and Rosenthal, before getting into Switzerland, like, what do we do afterward? Well, we just go back to fight because someone has to end this war.
Right.
And so in a way there's this cyclical, endless thing going on there.
And you don't really know in the end if they survived the war or not.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You know that they managed to escape this one time.
Yeah.
That's the story. And
there was a previous version of the script that had them make an agreement to meet at a certain cafe after the war, and then the last scene would have been people celebrating the armistice, like the end of the war, and then at that cafe. But then we would see a table with 2 empty chairs, like hinting that they would not have made it. But that's not the version of the script that they went with.
I feel like maybe they would have given an ending that really wasn't necessary.
Let's get our attention here to this lady, actually, Elsa, who is a German farm woman who welcomes them, 2 French soldiers who are obviously escapee. Yeah, welcomes them, doesn't ask any question.
Receives them in her house.
Yeah, feeds them, helps them. It seems like that's the general idea, right? That's how most of the characters feel like they think, right?
Yeah.
I don't really hate you, you're just the enemy,
right?
Quote unquote. Like, there's no...
Not even like an enemy that they strongly feel about, but just you're an enemy of my country. So
yeah, like when they first come to the camp, they're like, oh, we're sorry, but if you escape or try to escape, we'll have to shoot you.
Right.
Like, we don't want to do it, but like it...
But you have to understand that's what this is, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like to create a story like this, where really all the characters are not really that emotionally invested in fighting this war, no. This could have gone easily wrong. But the actors managed to really capture that feeling perfectly. Because
it's definitely a choice, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think, in a sense, they shy away from battle scenes, because that's when you see the darker side of man.
Right.
But that's not what the movie is trying to focus on. It's trying to focus on what we have in common, the common humanity of everyone in the movie, regardless of if they're British, German, French, etc. Aristocrats, peasants, everyone is just human, and they have these common experiences. When you look at, for example, a movie like All Quiet on the Western Front, there is this theme of like the futility of war that is present throughout the movie. But at the beginning, that's not what we see, right? At the beginning, we see very much these kids who are, kind of being brainwashed indoctrinated, and then they go to war to defend their country and to kill the vermin, right? But here everybody understands the cost, right?
It's because here everybody is like someone who is actually actively involved in the war. It's not the teacher who sits back home and sends his students to war,
Yeah.
These are all officers or soldiers. These are all people who...
But even Elsa, for example, is not like a soldier in any way, but she's lost people.
But she's lost like basically her whole family. So.
And she could have went the route of like, oh, now I hate the French. But no, she understands, again, the futility of
the
of
French
it all.
also lost people just like her.
One of the best examples they use to showcase that it's all useless is one of the French fort that keeps jumping back and forth between the 2 armies, right? And they celebrate every time, but now the French recaptured it, now the German captured it, and like there is no point really.
Yeah,
I feel like we could be going on and on and on for hours about this movie and write an essay or something. Let's move on with some other elements of our discussion. So the movie was a great success, massive hit in France, where it is estimated that 12 million admissions were granted. International success too. Of course, it was nominated at the Academy Awards.
So far, this is the first movie in a foreign language
This is the first foreign language film to be nominated for Best Picture. I guess I haven't seen Parasite, which is the first foreign language film
to have won.
We're a long way still.
Yeah, that is true. But to be honest, this first foreign language nomination came earlier than I thought.
Yeah, but Best Picture was its only nomination.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't believe it.
I mean, it is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I believe you. But I mean, this movie should have been nominated for so many categories. Like, so many, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Direction, cinematography, story, actors.
It kind of feels like the Academy was catching up, though, right? This is a movie that came out in 1937, being nominated for the following year, right? Academy Award.
Yeah, true. Like they got to it later.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit at the beginning of how the negatives for the film were almost lost. But even back then, when the film first aired in the following years, the movie was controversial, to say the least, among certain circles. You can probably guess
I can imagine,
which
yeah.
ones. So the Nazi propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, declared that La Grande Illusion was cinematic public enemy number one and ordered prints of the movie to be confiscated and destroyed.
This is a movie that doesn't sell ideals or propaganda against any one nation or individual. It gives you the idea that war is not necessary and that it affects people regardless of which side they're on, you know? And it manages to do it so well. You do see a perfect balance between the German and the French. Mm-hmm. So to think that it would be considered public enemy to their country, whatever, means that you want to make war.
When we talked about Renoir's, intentions with the movie, it is very much a movie that goes against the grain of what the Nazi Germany was trying to do.
Right.
This is a movie that not only has a Jewish main character who's, sympathetic to the whole story. This is also a movie that promotes an anti-war message, right? Yeah. And Germany was on the march for war in 1937 and then the years following. And this is a movie that tries to share this idea of common humanity and that racial divides are not really divides. Yeah. We're all the same still. And racial divides was the Nazi Germany
based everything on, yes. Yeah.
Also interesting is that it was banned in France. So fearing a decline in fighting moral, French authorities banned the film in 1940 for as long as the war should last. And then the movie was again banned when the Germans invaded France and took control. And of course, they didn't want the movie anyway. Now, this movie is regarded by critics and film historians alike as not only a masterpiece of French cinema, but amongst one of the greatest films ever made. Would you agree with this sentiment?
Yes, I do agree with it. I do. I feel like we really didn't do it justice, but this film is so complex that it's hard to talk about
and
everything.
We were a bit all over the place here, but I wanted to touch upon like several of the themes that were touched in the movie, but it's hard to really structure conversations, especially since we're just most of the time just gushing about the scenes and characters we like.
I feel like we were definitely most impressed with the message of the movie, and you feel it really strongly when you watch it. Like, it doesn't go above your head. It's not hit or miss. It's a 100% hit, the message of this movie.
And you feel it through the acting, right? This is still a movie. This is still actors and cinematographers, and all of this is also well done. We didn't spend much time on the actors or the cinematography or the sound, but everything in this movie is so top-notch.
Right, like, the movie works so well because all of the elements are so well done.
Yeah. So is there any elements that we haven't touched on though that you'd like to talk about?
So many, but I think you got the point. So I would definitely recommend this movie.
Me too. This is a great movie. Now comes the time for us to rank this movie. I don't think the ranking is going to be a surprise, but still we have to do it. So for every year of the Academy Award, we rank the movies that were nominated for that year. Right now, we're doing our ranking of the 1938 Academy Award, the 11th. Our list as of now is number 5, The Citadel, number 4, Four Daughters, number 3, Boys Town, number 2, The Adventures of Robin Hood, and number 1, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Oh, sorry, I got it wrong. And number 1, La Grande Illusion.
Yes, definitely. We were kind of disappointed with this year so far. But now this movie came and it topped not only all the movies of this year, but like we said, a lot of the movies that we've seen
before,
like as part of this goal. So I'm pretty happy right now.
Again, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. A movie that, by the way, we haven't mentioned, but we watched in French, subtitled in English. That's it. And for our review of La Grande Illusion. If you want to see us ramble more about other movies, I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed already. Like this video if you did. Comment in the comment section below. What did you think of La Grande Illusion?
Because after watching this review, you've definitely watched the movie, right?
Exactly. And don't forget that if you yourself have a goal or a dream that you want to realize, like for example, escape a fortress, all you need to do is take that first step.